Hello everyone, welcome to the Daily Current Affairs Analysis brought to you by Shankar IAS Academy, 19th of February 2026. Before getting into the discussion, please make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you haven't, please do subscribe and also hit the bell icon to receive on-time updates from the Academy. So before getting into the discussion, we have an important announcement. It is regarding the pre-fit prelims test series. The batch 2 will be starting on 20th of February 2026. Link for the registration is available on the website. Or if you have any doubt or if you need more information, you can contact us in this number. Before that, why we need to take the pre-fit test series? Because we can see that in the prelims 2025, nearly 31 questions got reflected from the pre-fit test series, and out of the 31, 20 questions had direct reflection and 11 questions had partial reflection. So it's not about 31 questions but about 62 marks. So coming to the topic for today's discussion, the first topic is about cryogenian period and snowball earth. So snowball earth is a geological event that happened in the past where earth completely became a snowball. And the next article is about denotified tribes, because recently the union government assured separate counting of denotified tribal communities in India, but so far there is no clarity regarding the mechanism. And the next article, friend of package labeling. So recently the Supreme Court of India directed the Food Safety and Standard Authority of India to consider the mandatory friend labeling of the ultra processed food. And the fourth article is about the India-France relation, because we can see that recently the French President Emmanuel Macron visited India, and he even participated in the AI Impact Summit organized by India. So we'll be discussing the India-France relation and cooperation in various areas. And finally, we'll be discussing the prelims focus for the day. So if all set, let's begin the discussion with the first article. So coming to the first article, what is snowball earth? The article is taken from the Hindu. So the snowball earth, it's a geological event that happened in the past where earth became completely a frozen ball. And we can see that since it is talking about a geological event, we can expect questions related to geological event in GS paper 1, and also we can expect indirect questions regarding the impact of such geological events in GS paper 3, and we can use this such a point from such geological phenomena in both the papers. So what is mean by snowball earth? Let us discuss. So the snowball earth, like I mentioned, is a geological event where earth became completely frozen. Even the tropical latitude of this earth became completely frozen. We know that during the time of ice age, the earth will be frozen, will cool down. The tropical regions will experience extreme rainfall, while the polar regions of the earth will become frozen. That is the phenomenon during the time of ice age. But during this time, during the snowball earth, the earth itself became completely frozen, even the tropical region. And we can see that this geological event took place in the cryogenian period between 720 and 635 million years ago. And that happens in the Neoproterozoic era. See, this Neoproterozoic era is an era that marked an interval between the Precambrian and the Cambrian periods of the earth. And this Neoproterozoic era can be classified into three periods. The one is cryogenian period, the second is Stonian period, and the third is Ediacaran. You might have heard about the term Ediacaran explosion. So this Neoproterozoic era can be classified into cryogenian, Stonian, and Ediacaran. So like I mentioned, during the snowball time, the earth became completely frozen, and we have to understand that this cryogenian period experienced two major glaciations. The first is Eurasian glaciation, which happened between 1717 and 659 million years ago, and the second is Marinovan glaciation, that is a second glaciation happened in the cryogenian period. So cryogenian period 70 to 635 million years ago, happening in the Neoproterozoic period, and within this cryogenian period the earth witnessed two major glaciations, that is Eurasian and the second is Marinovan. And talking about the 5 stages of snowball earth. So why the earth became a snowball? So in the first stage, in the past, we had a supercontinent on this planet called Rodinia. So the supercontinent started breaking. So this breaking up of the supercontinent resulted into increasing coastline as well as rainfall. So this rainfall absorbed the carbon dioxide content in the atmosphere. So the carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere started falling. That means the temperature is also falling. And what happened? The albedo of the earth. What is mean by albedo? Albedo means the capacity of the earth to reflect the insolation, that is incoming solar radiation. So the temperature is falling, so the ice started spreading, so the albedo of the earth started increasing. That means now the earth has the capacity to reflect more insolation. So this is a second stage. Increasing level of albedo is the second stage. And in the third stage, that is the frozen stage, in this stage the earth became completely frozen. Even the tropical regions became frozen, and the ice sheet on this planet had a thickness approximately 1 kilometer. Had a thickness of 1 kilometer, and the surface temperature reached minus 50 degrees Celsius. This was the condition in the third phase. And the fourth phase. So even though the earth was completely frozen, it became an ice ball. The volcanic activity was happening inside the earth. As a result, the greenhouse gas started accumulating beneath the surface, and over a period of time, this accumulation of the greenhouse gases started raising the temperature, and the ice started melting. That means deglaciation started. And so the fourth stage is the deglaciation stage. So the glaciation, the ice started melting, and in the fifth stage, the earth came back to the normal phase. So 5 phases are there in the snowball earth. The first phase is the breaking up of the Rodinia supercontinent and increasing level of rainfall, and that led to the absorption of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. When the atmospheric carbon dioxide level fell, it resulted into cooling effect, and this cooling effect resulted into high albedo, more insolation reflected back to the back to the universe. What happened? The earth entered into a frozen stage. So in this stage, what happened? In this stage, the ice reached even up to the tropical area, and the ice sheet had a thickness of 1 kilometer, and the surface temperature reached minus 50 degrees Celsius. And even though the earth was completely frozen, the volcanic activity was happening beneath the surface. And in the fourth phase, what happened? Due to the accumulation of greenhouse gas from this volcanic activity, deglaciation started. That means the melting of the ice started. And finally, the earth reached the normal stage. So these are the 5 stages in the snowball earth. So what will be the impact, the climate impact of the snowball earth? High planetary albedo. So like I mentioned, the earth capacity to reflect the sunlight or the insolation will be high. And suppression of the normal hydrological circle, because the ocean became frozen. The ocean became frozen means less ocean atmospheric interaction will happen, and reduced ocean circulation. Yes, because ocean was a solid ice. And what are the geological evidence that supports this snowball phenomena, that snowball event? The first is the cap carbonate. Cap carbonates are nothing but limestones or dolostone deposited during the time of the melting of the glacier. And the next evidence is this dropstone. Dropstones are nothing but isolated rock deposited during the time of glaciation, and these two evidence are found across this world, even in the polar region, the tropical region, and even in the ocean basins. So we can see that after the deglaciation, the oxygen level in the atmosphere started rising, and this resulted into Cambrian explosion. So Cambrian, what is mean by explosion? Explosion in the geology means in a period there will be an increasing life biological activity. That means the life will start at the number of the population, everything will increase. The diversity, the population number, everything will increase. So that is mean by explosion in the geology. So in different stages of the earth, we have experienced this explosion. For example, Ediacaran explosion. During the time of Ediacaran explosion, the atmosphere, the oxygen level in the water became rich in oxygen, and the population, the life became more active inside the ocean. So to mention the rise of the population, we are using the term explosion in the geology. So after the snow earth, the oxygen level rise, that resulted into rising population, and that is known as Cambrian explosion. So what is the new study regarding this snowball Earth? So the study was published in the Earth and Planetary Science Letters, and the study was conducted in Port Ascaic Formation in Scotland. And here the researchers studied nearly 2,640 sediment layers identified as annual verbs. Annual verbs are nothing but pair of sediment. Annual verbs are pair of sediment. Here you can see the picture of the verb. So once this can be considered as a verb. Annual verb means a verb deposited in 1 year. So the two glaciers, that means the two layers are deposited in 1 year. That is known as annual verb. So here you can see that this area is lighter and this area is darker. The lower layer is darker and the upper layer is lighter. So the upper layer indicates meltwater runoff, while the lower layer indicating reduced melting. That means even though the earth was frozen, even though the earth was completely frozen, even though the activities, the ocean atmospheric interaction and other physical phenomena was weak in earth, still the earth was not completely shut down. The earth was somewhat active. And this researchers, they linked this the changes in the sediment with the solar cycles. So the thickness variation in verbs matched with the solar cycles. So the thickness of the verbs, the sediments is matching with the solar cycles. So what are the identified cycles? First is sunspot cycle. We know that sunspot is the dark area within sun with a high magnetic activity. So we can see that it happens, the sunspot cycle happens every 9 to 11 years during the time of solar cycle. So this time, during the time of the solar maxima, the sunspot will reach, the activity will reach, the peak. So the variation in the thickness happens in every 9 to 11 years. And also if you take the long-term variation, that is matching with the Gleisberg cycle. Gleisberg cycle is nothing but it means the long-term fluctuation in the sunspot activity. And usually we will take the calculation of 90 to 100 years. What is the fluctuation of sunspot activity in 90 to 100 years? That is the calculation. That is the base of this Gleisberg cycle. So the variation in the thickness of the sediments that we found in the Scotland is matching with the solar cycle. That means, even though the earth was completely frozen, even though the ocean atmospheric interaction was very weak, even though the activities on this earth, physiological, biological, all those activities were weak, still the earth was not completely shut down. Earth was active. And one of the major reasons behind the power of the earth was the sun, the solar energy. So even a slight source of energy can bring certain changes in the earth. That is meant by this study. So coming to the prelims practice question, the question is with reference to the snowball earth hypothesis, consider the following statements. Statement 1, it refers to period during the cryogenian when ice sheet possibly extended to tropical latitudes. The cryogenian, statement 2, the cryogenian period belongs to the Paleozoic era. Statement 3, verbs are annual sedimentary layers used in paleoclimatic reconstruction. Statement 4, the Gleisberg cycle refers to the short term, that is 2 to 3 year oceanic oscillation. Which of the statements is or are correct? So we are asking for the correct statement. Option A 1, 2 and 3. Option B 1 and 3 only. Option C 2 and 4 only. Option D 1, 3 and 4. So from our discussion we can easily eliminate the option C, the statement 2 and statement 4. The cryogenian period belongs to Neoproterozoic era, not Paleozoic. Neoproterozoic era is an interval period between the Precambrian and the Cambrian era, and this era has 3 important periods. One of them is cryogenian, the second is Stonian, and the third is Ediacaran. And the statement 4, the Gleisberg cycle refers to short-term 2 to 3 year oceanic isolation. No, it is talking about solar cycle, and that too it is not short-term. It is used to measure the long-term fluctuation in the sunspot activity. And typically long-term means 90 to 100 years or beyond that. So the statement 4 and statement 2 are incorrect. That means the correct answer is option B, 1 and 3 only. Yes, with this we will move to the next article. So coming to the second article, a separate classification for denotified tribes. The article is taken from the Hindu. So on the 17th current affair analysis, we had a topic called Samvad, right? It is an initiative launched by the National Legal Services Authority to bring accessibility to justice to every backward communities, including the denotified tribes. So in that discussion, we briefly discussed the history of the denotified tribal community. And now we have another article regarding this denotified tribal community. So what is the article? Before that, what is the UPSC relevance of this topic? Because we can see that since it is talking about the tribal issue, we can expect questions in GS paper 1 in society, and also it is talking about governance. So it is relevant in GS paper 2 also. So what is the news? So recently, the union government assured the leaders of the denotified tribal community that they will be counted in the upcoming census, that is in the 2027 census. But so far, there is no idea or there is no clarity regarding the mechanism to count the denotified tribal community. And now they are, demanding a separate column in the census form to count the denotified tribal community. So we can see that if you take the definition, like I mentioned, that the denotified tribal communities were once considered as born criminals in the 1872 Tribal Criminals Act launched by the enacted by the British government. And we can see that this led to severe suppression of the rights and freedom of the certain tribal communities in India. And after independence in 1952, we replaced this Tribal Criminals Act with the Habitual Offenders Act of 1952. But again, this act also received a lot of criticism, and this led to the use of the term denotified tribal community for administrative purpose. This is a short history of the denotified tribal community. So what are the categories included in this denotified tribal community? Denotified tribes, nomadic tribes, and semi-nomadic tribes. And what is the present issue? They are demanding for a separate census classification. That means a separate column in the census form. And also they need a clarity regarding the systematic counting for the denotified tribal population. So talking about the Criminal Tribes Act of 1871-72, it is enacted by the British government. So as a part of this act, the tribes has to be registered. Their movements will be restricted. They will be always under constant monitoring. And also we can see that it is based on hereditary criminality theory. That means they are considered, certain tribal communities in India were considered born criminals by the British government. And like I mentioned, it was repealed in 1952 and replaced with Offenders Act and also Habitual Offenders Act. And now we are using the term denotified tribal community for the administrative purpose. And talking about the enumeration history, so how the tribal communities, including the denotified tribal communities, were counted in census since the 20th century. So the census of 1911 and 1931 discussed the criminal tribes, and we can see that in 1931, it was the last detailed caste enumeration in India ever happened. After that, we calculated the SC/ST population, but there is no clarity regarding the population of the denotified tribal group. And we can see that in the post independence, that is since 1951, there is no separate enumeration for denotified tribes, and many denotified tribal communities were included in either SC, ST or OBC groups. And we can see that now in 2026, the Registrar General and the Census Commissioner agreed to enumerate. That means they agreed to count the denotified tribal group in the population, but there is no clarity regarding how they are going to count. And now the tribal leaders are demanding for a separate column in the census form. And talking about the major commissions launched for the denotified tribal groups, the first commission came in the year 2008 after independence. It was the first national commission for the denotified tribal group. That was the Range Commission, and it recommended target welfare measures for the empowerment of the denotified tribal community in India. And after that, we have this IDATE commission, which came to power, which was launched in 2017, and this commission identified nearly 1,200 plus denotified tribal community in India, and many of them were already became part of the SC/ST OBC list. And we can see that the commission also highlighted that nearly 268 communities are still remaining classified approximately. And the commission also recommended proper identification, welfare measures, and the consideration of permanent institutional mechanism like this national commission for backward class. So National Commission for SC and ST. So like that, the IDATE commission recommended a separate permanent institutional mechanism to ensure the welfare and empowerment of the denotified tribal group. And not that there is no constitutional separate category created so far. So even though the commission recommended this in 2017, so far there is no step was taken for a separate classification of the denotified tribal group, either as a part of administrative purpose or either in constitution. So talking about the welfare measures, so we launched the SEED scheme, that is the scheme for economic empowerment of DNTs by the Ministry of Social Justice to empower the denotified tribal community in India. And the major focus of the scheme was livelihood, education, housing and health. And we can see that this scheme, even though it looked to empower the denotified tribal community, it had a major implementation challenge. That was the beneficiary has to get the denotified tribal community certificate to access the benefits. The person has to get the denotified tribal community certificate to get the benefits under the SEED scheme. But we can see that many states in India are not issuing a community certificate called denotified tribal community certificate. So the person cannot access the benefit under the SEED scheme. So that is why we can see that out of the total budget allocated for this SEED scheme, that is approximately 200 crore, only a fraction was used so far. And what is the current demand of the DNTs? So they are demanding a separate constitution classification like the SC, ST and OBC. And we can see that they are demanding sub-classification within the DNTs, because within the DNT community, we have a semi-nomadic community, nomadic community and a settled community. And talking about the relevant constitutional articles in this context, so we have the article 341 and 342. So both the articles empowers the President of India to define and notify the tribal the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe in a state and union territory in consultation with the governor. But there is no such provision for denotified tribal community. And then we have the article 340, which establishes the backward classes commission. But we can see that there is no separate constitutional category like denotified tribal community so far. And what are the important bodies or institutions relevant in this context? We have the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, because they are launching initiatives like the SEED scheme and all. And the next is the National Commission for Backward Classes. So we hope that the voices of the DNTs will be heard soon. So with this, we will answer this prelims practice question. The question is, with reference to denotified tribes, consider the following statements. Statement 1, the Criminal Tribes Act of 1871 was repealed after independence. Yes, it was repealed in 1952 and renamed it as Habitual Offenders Act, but later we removed this term and we started using the term denotified tribal groups for administrative purpose. And statement 2, all DNT communities are currently classified under scheduled tribes. No, some of them are classified in SC, some of them are classified in OBC, and some of them are remaining still unclassified. That is, according to the IDATE Commission report, nearly 268 communities are still remaining unclassified in India. And statement 3, the IDATE Commission identified certain DNT communities that were not classified under SC, ST or OBC. Yes. And statement 4, the DNTs are constitutionally recognized as separate category under Article 341 and 342. Article 341 empowers the President to define and notify the scheduled caste, while Article 342 empowers the President to define and notify the scheduled tribe in a particular state and union territory. But there is no such separate categorization for DNTs in the Constitution. So the statement 4 is also incorrect. So the correct answer is option 3, 1 and 3 only. Let's check. Yes. With this, we will move to the next article. So coming to the third article, front and center on the front of package labeling issue. The article is taken from The Hindu. So recently the Supreme Court of India directed the Food Safety and Standard Authority of India to consider mandatory front of package warning labels, particularly to the food which are high in sugar, salt and saturated fat. And the direction was given by the bench led by Justice J.B. Pradiwala and K.V. Vishwanath. And we can see that the direction was linked with the right to health under the Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. And why this direction was given to the Food Safety and Standard Authority of India? Because they are the authority which are responsible for controlling and regulating the food items. And under the Food Safety and Standard Act of 2006, the Food Safety and Standard Authority of India is responsible for regulating the labeling of the food items. And now what is the direction? Considering the mandatory front of package warning labels. That means currently we can see that the labels are given in the back side of the packed food. But now we have to consider the front of package warning label, and not that warning label, not rating, we are talking about label. And so here we can see some of the important models of labeling system. We have the multiple traffic lights to indicate the presence of salt, calorie and the sugar in the food item. And then we have the reference intakes. So using this labeling system, we can inform the consumer that per serving you are intaking this much sugar, this much salt, this much calorie. And then we have the warning symbol. So if the food is high in sugar, if the food is high in salt, if the food is high in saturated fat, then in that case we can use the warning symbol to make the consumer rethink about his choice. And next we have the nutrition score system, which scores the food from A to E, using different colors. And then we have the health star rating system. So in actually this case between the labeling on this labeling issue starts in the year 2025 itself. In 2025, the Supreme Court gave the same direction to the Food Safety and Standard Authority, and after that, the Food Safety and Standard Authority, they even formed a committee to recommend to discuss the issue related to the labeling. But after that, after formation of the committee and all, there was no response or no progress regarding this issue, and that is why at present the Supreme Court gave a time frame. That means within another 2 weeks, the Food Safety and Standard Authority has to respond to the direction given by the Supreme Court of India regarding the labeling issue. And so what is the rationale behind the labeling? So we can see that the sugar intake leads to diabetes, salt, hypertension, no need to say, and saturated fat is one of the major reasons behind the high cholesterol and the cardiovascular issue. And if you take the India diabetes study done by the Indian Council of Medical Research in 2023, we can see that nearly 101 million people in India are diabetic. That is nearly 11.4% of the total population is diabetic. And 136 million people are pre-diabetic. That means they will become diabetic in the near future. And next, if you take the case of hypertension, the silent killer, it is around 35.5% of the total population is hypertension, has hypertension, and that means BP. And BP is one of the major reasons behind the cardiovascular diseases. And high cholesterol and abdominal fat. Abdominal fat, nearly 39.5% of the total population has, severe abdominal fat. And next, high cholesterol, 24%. So we can see that these are the primary reasons behind the increasing cases of non-communicable diseases in India and also in the world. And we can see that the global context, we can see that the WHO, as a part of the global action plan for non-communicable diseases from 2013 to 2030, they recommended the front of package labeling as an important or a best practice to make the consumer aware about the issues associated with the high intake of calorie food and all. And talking about the regulatory framework, so what is the existing law? We have the Food Safety and Standard Authority Act, Standard Act of 2006, which empowers the Food Safety and Standard Authority to regulate the labeling of the food items. And then we have the Food Safety and Standard Labeling and Display Regulation of 2020. And if you take the developments from between 2025 and 2026, we can see that, like I mentioned, in 2025 itself, the Supreme Court directed the Food Safety and Standard Authority to consider this front of package labeling, and they even formed a committee to discuss this, but later the expert committee did not progress much. And we can see that currently the Food Safety and Standard Authority of India proposed the Indian nutrition rating model instead of warning label. But the petitioners means nearly 35 NGOs, they demanded the warning label instead of rating model, Indian nutrition rating model. So the FSI, they told that instead of going for mandatory labeling, we will use the nutrition rating model to rate the food. But now we can see that the petitioners are opposing that. They want mandatory labeling system, not the nutrition rating model. And talking about the constitutional principle, in the beginning itself, we mentioned that we have the Article 21, which talks about right to health. And then we have the Article 47 of the Directory Principles of State Policy, which directs the state to take adequate measures to improve the nutrition and public health. And talking about the governance issues in mandatory labeling, so we can see that first of all, the major issue is delay in the regulatory action. So we can see that in 2025, the Supreme Court gave the direction and they even formed an expert committee, but after formation of the expert committee, there was no progress. And industry lobbying concerns and balancing the public health, ease of doing business, and consumer rights. So public health has to be managed. For that we have to regulate the packed food, and ease of business has to be promoted. For that we have to control the regulation, and the consumer rights. That means the consumer has the right to know, the authentic information regarding a product. So therefore, managing the three pillars itself is a major challenge before us. And talking about the judicial activism versus regulatory autonomy. So in this case, we can see a contrast between the judicial activism and the regulatory autonomy, because the Supreme Court is stepping into this issue because the FSI is not responding. And why the front of package labeling matters? What are the advantages? First of all, it will improve the consumer's choice. So the consumer, through getting an information, he can take adequate the best choice according to his health and lifestyle. Encourages product reformulation, supports preventive healthcare. Yes, if the consumer is not ready to intake the calorie rich food or sugar rich food, in that case it is a step towards preventive healthcare. And reduces long-term health expenditure, because we can see that the non-communicable diseases need long-term treatment. For example, diabetes, it is lifelong treatment is required for diabetes, and for hypertension we need lifelong requirement. And for cancer, in the last on 17th we discussed the time burden in the cancer treatment. So the non-communicable diseases needs long-term treatment. That means long-term healthcare expenditure. And if we take some of the best international practices associated with the mandatory food labeling, we can see that Chile, they adopted the labeling system, and we can see a significant intake in the sugary drink in the economy, in the Chilean economy. And the traffic light system was adopted in in UK, and it also a great success. And we can see that the WHO endorses interpretative labeling. So as a part of the global action plan on non-communicable diseases 2013-30, the WHO is encouraging the labeling practices, and it is a part of preventive healthcare continuum. Yes, because we can see that if the consumer is making a wise choice, that he is not ready to intake the sugary rich food, then he can escape from diabetes. He will not become diabetic. So in that case, we are preventing the issue or the disease even before it is happening. So coming to the mains practice question, the question is, front of package labeling is not merely a consumer information tool, but a public health intervention. Examine the statement in the context of India's rising burden of non-communicable diseases. So it's a 15 marks question, and you have to write around 250 words, write the answer, post it in the comment section. We will review and we will reply for your answer. Now it's time to move to the next article. So coming to the next article, India-France joint statement. So we know that this article is taken from PIB, and it is talking about the bilateral ties between India and France. Therefore, it is relevant in GS paper 2 in IR, right? So, what is the news? Recently, the French President Emmanuel Macron visited India from 17th to 19th February, and he even participated in the AI Impact Summit organized by India. So, with the visit of Emmanuel Macron, the French-India relationship elevated to the status of special global strategic partnership. And this year marks the 25th strategic partnership between India and France, because it was started in the year 1998. And this meeting was guided by the Horizon 2047 roadmap. See, this Horizon 2047 roadmap was a guide adopted by both nations in the year 2023 to guide their bilateral ties. And talking about the commitments in various areas. So first you start with the defense and the strategic cooperation. So we can see a shift in the defense cooperation between India and the France. Before that, the France was a major defense producer, and India will purchase. That means India is a consumer. But now we can see a shift from buyer to seller. That means both nations are cooperating in designing, developing, and producing the defense equipments. And major areas of cooperation are Rafale marine jets, submarines such as Scorpion P-75, jet engines and helicopters, defense space cooperation. So what is the objective of this shift? Why India is planning to make or working on such a shift? First of all, strengthening India's defense manufacturing, because we can see that at present India is the largest defense partner of Russia. If we do not have diverse options, then we have to depend on superpowers like Russia and the United States of America. Since they are superpowers, their policies and their agendas may change anytime. Russia is occupied with the Ukraine tension, while USA recently, the Trump administration, their policies, and it was even difficult for the European Union to cooperate with the American administration because of the Trump policies. So the agendas of the superpowers will change frequently. Therefore, it is our responsibility to diversify our options. And it will support the cooperation in the field of defense, will support the principles or the objectives of the Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense. And talking about the commitments in Indo-Pacific and global governance, so both nations share a common vision regarding the Indo-Pacific region. Why the Indo-Pacific region is very important? Because it has resources, it is important for trade, and at the same time, there's a big factor called China. So if the rule of law is not maintained in Indo-Pacific region, then it will be an advantage for China. And the cooperation in the field of Indian Ocean region, all these commitments are given by both nations regarding the Indo-Pacific region. And multilateral reform, France supports India's United Nations Security Council permanent membership, and also France guaranteed cooperation in G7, European Union, and also the matters related to the initiatives brought by the Financial Action Task Force. So both nations are working on shape a multipolar world. Even though we are saying that after 1991 the world became multipolar, still it is unipolar and sometimes it is bipolar. But both nations are working towards multipolar world order. And commitments in technology, artificial intelligence and innovation. So we can see that the year of 2026 is declared as the India-France year of innovation, and both nations are working towards securing trustworthy AI and also bridging the AI divide. So certain areas will have the skill to use AI, certain areas will not have the skill to use AI, certain areas will have AI, certain areas will not have AI, and this variation or this difference will vary between countries, between regions, and even between the sectors. So addressing the gap is one of the objectives of the India-France commitment. And what are the key sectors of cooperation? Artificial intelligence and digital technology, cyber, research and startups, particularly promotion of the deep tech startups. And commitment in climate, energy and nuclear cooperation. Both nations supports the goal of Paris Agreement, which is planning to limit the global warming. And the next is cooperation in International Solar Alliance, because France is one of the founding members of the International Solar Alliance, and India launched this initiative in the France only. And France also supports the climate and disaster resilient infrastructure proposal given by the India. And talking about the nuclear energy, French government supports India's target of achieving 100 gigawatt nuclear capacity by 2047, and both nations are cooperating in the development of small modular reactors. And also we can see that in 2008 both nations cooperated to start the Jaidapur project. The Jaidapur project is it's a nuclear power plant developing under the cooperation of India and the French government. And this was launched in 2008, but it's been over 1 decade. But due to various issues like financial strain and all, it got delayed. It faced a lot of delays, but still it is under progress. And if as of 2026, if we complete this, we can say that it is going to be the largest nuclear power plant in the world. And the ocean governance, both nations supports the biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction, also known as High Seas Treaty. And talking about the commitment in the economy, critical minerals and connectivity. So, recently India and the European Union signed the mother of all deals, that is India-European Union Free Trade Agreement. French supported this, and a bilateral tax treaty amendment was brought to, to promote the ease of doing business and ease of movement of the goods and services. And critical minerals, cooperation in exploration and resilient supply chain. So both nations are working on, exploration of critical minerals and building a resilient supply chain. And the connectivity, French government supports the initiative of India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, which connects the India with the Europe via Middle East, and also supports infrastructure developments like railway and high speed rail system. And talking about the soft power diplomacy or people to people cooperation, so India is aiming to educate at least 30,000 Indian students in France by 2030. And both nations are cooperating in the research of artificial intelligence in the healthcare. For example, the cooperation between All India Medical Institute, Medical Science, All India Institute for Medical Science and Sorbonne. And talking about the cultural diplomacy, both the nations agreed to organize the Namaste France 2028 in the France. So this will be celebrating the 30th anniversary of the strategic relation, the relationship between India and the French government. And also both the nations are planning to promote museum and the language, to preserve the culture. And now we reach the main practice question. The question is, India-France relations have evolved beyond defense cooperation into a comprehensive strategic partnership. Discuss its significance for India's strategic autonomy and Indo-Pacific policy. So it is also a 15 marks question, and you have to write around 250 words. Based on the points, write the answer, post it in the comment section. We will review and we will reply for your answer. Now it's time to move to the prelims focus for the day. So coming to the prelims focus for the day, the first topic is trilateral naval exercise in Andaman Sea. It was conducted between Indian Navy along with Japan and Indonesian Navy. So the objective is to enhance the maritime security, cooperation capabilities. And who commanded this naval exercise? The Indian Navy formally took the command of the Combined Task Force 154 under the Combined Maritime Forces. So what is this Combined Task Force? So it's an initiative. It's an initiative for the multilateral training program, across the Middle East and Indian Ocean region. And this was launched in the May month of 2023. So, under this initiative, various exercises will be conducted. For example, regular maritime security enhancement training, exercises such as compass rose and northern or southern readiness. And it operates, this 154 combined task force operate along with other combined maritime forces like the combined task force 150 for maritime security, combined task force 151 for counter piracy, combined task force 152 for maritime security in the Arabian Gulf, and we have the combined task force 153 for the maritime security in the Red Sea. So the objective is very simple. It's an international platform where the navies will be cooperating for training to enhance the maritime security and the operational readiness and capabilities. And the next topic, Pesticides Management Bill 2025. So recently the Ministry of Agriculture has released the draft of the Pesticide Management Bill 2025 for public consultation. So this bill, if it becomes an act, it will be replacing the Insecticide Act of 1968 with a modern farmer-focused law, which aims to improve the welfare and life of the farmer. So, what are the major reforms in the draft for the Pesticide Management Bill? First is increased transparency and traceability in the pesticide service. Use of digital systems to simplify the approval for regulation and use of pesticides, and strong penalties if there is substandard or fake pesticides are found, then the culprits will be receiving severe penalties and punishments. And talking about the key provisions, mandatory accreditation of pesticide testing laboratory, and also provision for compounding of offences with penalties determined by the state authorities. So these are the key provisions in the new bill, and these are the major reforms introduced by the new bill in the draft. So once it becomes act, it will be replacing the Insecticides Act of 1968. So coming to the prelims practice question, the question is with the reference to combined task force operating in Western Indian Ocean region, consider the following pairs. 1. Combined Task Force 150 Counter-Terrorism and Maritime Security Operations, Combined Task Force 151 Counter-Piracy Operations, and Combined Task Force 154 Maritime Security Operations in Red Sea. Which of the pairs given above is or are correct? Comment in the comment section. With this, we are coming to the conclusion for today's current affair analysis. If you like the video, hit the like button, give your feedbacks as comments, and share this content with your friends. And before leaving this channel, don't forget to subscribe and also hit the bell icon to receive on-time updates from the academy. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for listening to me. Have a nice day.